In March of 1832, a 23-year-old Charles Darwin was on the Beagle, sailing around South America and eventually sailing around the world. Most of the early portion of the Beagle voyage was focused on the coast of South America, especially Argentina and Brazil. The Royal Navy had tasked Captain Fitzroy of the Beagle to create better charts and maps of the coast of Argentina and Brazil for their purposes. Each time they landed for supplies, Darwin was let off so he could explore the land while the Beagle was out doing its navigation. Captain Fitzroy had the Beagle sail up the mouth of the Santa Cruz River to see if it was a route across the Andes, but it wasn't. Meanwhile, Darwin went ashore and found fabulous fossils. At Monte Hermoso, he found even more spectacular fossils on the banks of the river. The Beagle sailed south toward Patagonia, and at the Rio Deseado, Darwin found more fossils right near the shore. Finally, the Beagle sailed around the south tip of South America in Tierra del Fuego, making observations about the peoples there, and then famously back to the Galapagos Islands, where Darwin made his amazing discoveries about the Galapagos finches, Galapagos tortoises, and others that led to the theory of evolution. The Beagle then continued around to Australia, and then around the south tip of Africa, and then returned to the coast of Brazil and Argentina and finished its surveying before returning in 1836, 5 full years later from the time the voyage had started. Certainly, the Galapagos animals were important to his ideas, but so too were the many fossils that he collected, especially on the coast of Argentina and Brazil. When he finally came home to Shropshire after 5 long years at sea, his father said, "Why, even the shape of his head has changed." But even more importantly, it was what was inside his head that had changed even more and influenced his future. Once he had returned, he farmed out most of the specimens he had collected to various experts. The fossils he gave to Sir Richard Owen, the world's most famous paleontologist at the time. As a part of the multi-volume Beagle Report, Owen described all the fossils that Darwin had brought from South America. Those specimens still reside in the Natural History Museum of London, carefully curated and protected in plastic tubs with lots of padding. I got a chance to see and touch this skull right here that Darwin himself had collected in Uruguay, the first known skull of a strange animal that Owen gave the name Toxodon, or bow tooth, because their molars are curved like a bow and arrow. Everything else about their teeth and skull were very strange and didn't resemble any mammal known from the northern hemisphere. The skull itself was sort of hippo-like, but had long chisel-like incisors in front, and the whole body was built something like a hippo or rhinoceros without a horn. At the time Owen looked at it, he had no idea what it was related to, so Toxodon remained a zoological mystery even after Owen had carefully described it. Another fossil that Darwin brought home and Owen described is a strange creature known as Macrauchenia. These are the foot bones of Macrauchenia as I saw them when I was in London. Owen did not know what animal it belonged to, but the long neck and funny feet suggested it might be related to camels, so Macrauchenia literally means giant llama. Later discoveries revealed that it had an even stranger skull, something that resembled no other mammal alive, with a long snout and nasal bones which were retracted, suggesting a short proboscis. It also had a relatively long neck and long legs, so it was even a greater zoological mystery when it was found complete enough. Owen moved on to other discoveries, but he was the first to describe many of the key strange animals that came from South America. The key breakthrough in South American mammal paleontology came with these two brothers here, Florentino Ameghino on the left and his older brother Carlos on the right. Carlos was mainly the field collector, while Florentino stayed home in Buenos Aires and studied the fossils that Carlos brought to him. The Ameghino brothers was the first to describe and then eventually name most animals we'll discuss in this video. They thought they were looking at the origins of all these animals like mastodonts and hippos and so on when they looked at these strange creatures in South America, but in fact they were looking at extreme examples of what we now know as evolutionary convergence. Until late in its history, South America never had mastodonts or elephants or hippos or rhinos or many other creatures, and these South American native hoof mammals took their places. By far, the largest group of these native South American hoof mammals were a group called the Ungulates, or the southern hoof mammals. Ungulates were extremely diverse and came in lots of different shapes and sizes, from Toxodon we've already seen, to many that were much smaller and more specialized in different ways. They come in two different subfamilies, the Toxodontia and the Typotheria, and every shape and size from rabbit-sized to hippo-sized. And yet their teeth are very strange and look nothing like mammals from the northern hemisphere. For example, Thomas Huxleya was sort of pig-like with very long digging claws, presumably able to dig up food sources. Even stranger was a creature called Homolodotherium. Built something like the calicotheres that are found in Eurasia and North America in the Miocene, they had huge claws on their front limbs and used them to pull down branches to feed. Hostaterius was built like a rhino and even had a bony horn in the center of his forehead, similar to that of a rhino. And the Hegedotheres, like Pachyrhicus, were built like rabbits and were tiny and rabbit-like in many respects. And all of these were notoungulates. Not rhinos, not rabbits, not hippos, but convergently evolved in body forms of those mammals found in the Northern Hemisphere. The second great group of South American hoof mammals are the lidopterns, like Macrauchenia that we saw already, but including a variety of other camel-like and horse-like forms that evolved independently in South America to resemble camels and horses from other continents. The most extreme example of this is Thoatherium, very much a horse-like animal that had a single toe on each foot, and in fact it was even more one-toed than the modern one-toed horse. Because modern horses still have remnants of their side toes, but Thoatherium had just a single toe with no remnants on the side. The third, even stranger group to South American hoof mammals were the Pyrotheres, whose name literally means fire beasts. They are known from a couple of very good skulls, including this one in Amherst College, which I've studied, and some others in South America, and partial skeletons. Like a mastodon or elephant, the nasal bones in the top of the skull are completely retracted, suggesting a significant proboscis, or maybe a full trunk. And yet, the teeth and most aspects of anatomy show they have no relation whatsoever to elephants, but have convergently evolved this ability to have a long trunk or proboscis. Once again, convergent evolution at work. Finally, the fourth major group of South American hoof mammals are the Astrapatheres, whose name literally means lightning beasts. They, too, had highly retracted nasal bones in the top of their skulls, suggesting that they were also bearing a proboscis, but also had enormous tusks, in a configuration not seen in elephants or any other kind of mammal that was familiar to us. Based on these retracted nasals, they're usually reconstructed again as looking something like an elephant or a mastodont, because they almost certainly had a significant proboscis along with their big tusks. So these are the four great groups of South American hoof mammals: the notoungulates, the lidopterns, the pyrotheres, and the Astrapatheres. Contrary to what the Amigunos thought, they are not related closely to any of the groups found in the Northern Hemisphere, and certainly not related to elephants or mastodons or rhinos or tapirs or horses that resemble them in many ways. Instead, they are one of the best examples of convergent evolution, of a body form filling an ecological niche that is otherwise unfilled in a place like South America that had no mammals from the Northern Hemisphere, so the South American forms evolved to take those ecological niches. But if they're not related to mastodons or hippos or horses or their relatives, what were South American native mammals related to? That was a great mystery for a very long time, and diagrams like this one from the 1950s showed them sort of floating in the middle of the hoof mammal radiation. But in the 1990s and 2000s, they were able to get DNA and mitochondria from both the Toxodon and Macrauchenia and discovered that in fact they have relatives in the Northern Hemisphere. Around 60 million years ago, the lidopterns diverged from the horse-rhino branch of the mammals, while maybe the notoungulates are related to the elephants and their relatives. But soon after they arrived, they became isolated on the South American island continent and evolved separately from hoof mammals in the Northern Hemisphere, so any appearance of elephants or hippos or rhinos or horses is strictly evolutionary convergence. Then, around 3.5 million years ago, the Panama Land Bridge connected, and North American mammals swept down to South America, invading and becoming the natives of the continent, including true horses, llamas, tapirs, peccaries, plus bears, dogs, cats, and many others we think of as typically South American, but actually came from North America. Just a few of these South American natives managed to move the other way, including a toxodont, which is found in Texas and Florida. Lidopterns, like Macrauchenia, and toxodons, like Toxodon itself, were still around at the end of the last ice age, when they vanished along with the giant mammals of most of the other continents. Their reasons for their extinction are still controversial, although it's probably a combination of both climate change and some human hunting. Whatever their cause, all of these South American natives are now fully extinct, and nothing like them has ever been seen again. For more information about the prehistoric animals of South America, check out my book, Giants of the Lost World.